years. And I find that it's helpful to take what I learned from my regular day-to-day consulting clients and try to distill it and make it easier for people coming up to learn from their mistakes and go out and make new ones. And this has been inspired by essentially a lot of my work now is taking small shops that are maybe 1 or 2 funding rounds past a good idea, a garage or a dorm room, to they're making money. They've you know, I'm thinking of a shop, one of my shops is they're doing something really intimate with Salesforce that makes it better. And then my eyes glaze over because they're talking about sales. But their problem is, from my point of view, as a securities strategist, I used to be a pen tester, and now I don't call myself one anymore because pen testing is boring. Strike me dead for saying that, but a lot of my challenges now are, how do you take that small shop? And that small shop, up until now, has been nailing small businesses. You know, we have 2 accounting firms of 30 people in the Atlanta suburbs. We've got A&Z Window Company with sales all across the Northeast. And all of a sudden, the sales rep calls up Bank of America and says, holy shit, I got a demo next week. And it goes from, you were selling to shops of 20, 30, 50 employees. And you go and you are going to get to pitch your something as a service to Bank of America. What's the difference? Anyone run into this problem yet? This sales rep, what's the next thing they're doing after they're going to pitch Bank of America? What's their next great concern? Their concern is, do I get a 35-foot boat or a 40-foot boat, right? They're like, holy shit, I get 20% commission on that sale, and it's all going to go smooth until there's, oh, we just have one question about this. Can you fill out this little security questionnaire about how you are going to secure our valuable data? And at some point, you hear the music skip. What are you trying to do? Turn the lights off? Okay. Cool. I've been a professor long enough. I'm happy to do that. So this is, you're tasked with that job. How do we make this security questionnaire? Because think of every shop I've worked at before I do this work. Who filled out that vendor questionnaire? Wrong, a sales rep, right? Guy who wants to make the sale, like, yeah, sure, we do that thing. What's DLP? Okay, that is the voice of reason. But, yeah, I just said yes for all this. You're like, no! I didn't know what these words meant, but we can do all this in a week. Actually, my favorite one doing one of these, I'm helping a client pitch a large state agency, and I hear a sales rep say, we can pass FedRAMP in 2 weeks. And I'm like, you don't have policies. Like, you don't have any. Like, no. And I just kick him out of the chair. And unfortunately, the problem is that there was a woman who's like in charge of like something in sales, like after sales support. So she's probably wondering, why am I trying to like play footsie with her? I'm like, no, I'm trying to kick him. Can you kick him? Stop the sales rep from speaking. Instead, she's like, why are you doing that? I'm like, and I actually just kind of nudged her chair into him, like, stop. And I had to apologize after, like, look, I had to make him stop saying things. And if it was that, or I was going to fake a seizure. Like, that was the next move I had. That's the sort of commitment I have for clients. It's like, I will stop you from doing something you can't walk back. So, who am I? Why am I justified to be here ranting about this? I am, I think that's my title. Risk and Advisory Services for Leviathan Security Group out of Seattle. Of course, they don't let me go to Seattle that often because my Philadelphia accent and my sense of time doesn't really work well there. I'm a lawyer as well, just not your lawyer. My day job is security consultant, but not your security consultant. That can be fixed. I have business cards, and I sign retainers. I do the stuff I'm going to rant about. How to rapidly mature your shop, how to spend as little money as possible and get as much bang for your security buck. And I used to grade the stuff I'm going to talk about. My gig before this was being an assessor, not an auditor, because an auditor implies a third party can benefit from it. No, I was contracted by Blue Cross Blue Shield to go and torture their subcontractors and go, so you say you do this thing, prove it, or not. Maybe you lose the contract. Maybe we give it to the other shop that does what you do because they don't suck as badly. So, who are you and why are you here? You work for an adequately staffed and funded security program and want to know how the other half lives, right? I'm assuming not, you know. I'm assuming if you are working for those, like, oh no, we're fully staffed. All our recs are closed. I have a fairly unlimited budget, and like then you wake up and go, oh, you're right. I have 9 open recs for a team of 12. I'm currently 18 to-dos behind. So yeah, no one is adequately funded. No one has the staff they need. You just got promoted into security management. Hey, remember when you were like senior nerd and then your boss left and you're like, and the other senior nerd was like, 1, 2, 3, not it. Hey, congratulations, you're manager. What? No, I'm pen tester. Like, too late. Or maybe you got suckered into it. It's going to be a raid. You are going to get the appreciation that you've always wanted from vendors who want to sell you things. Hi, this is Bill from Rapid7. You know what we do? Do you know what I do? No? Please stop calling. So the old managers walked away and you got promoted. That's actually one of my clients. Their security manager literally like said, I can't do this. Not like jump to another shop, just like, I think he's delivering pizza or an Uber. Just like saw the writing on the wall, was like, I'm out. I've signed too many, I've let too much shit slide, I gotta go. Or, anyone ever been this guy or gal? You're the first security hire? So who's the CISO? Me? Says in this org sheet, I'm the CISO and the firewall manager. And IR response. Huh. Oh boy. Yeah. And you look at the policy and it's like, the incident response team shall be headed by the CISO. And the incident response team shall be the CISO. And anyone else who the CISO can strong arm into, help! Help me! Right? So you're the first security hire at that shop. So you have to rapidly mature your IT operations and your other operations really, really quickly to be able to maintain existing client relationships and get new ones. This is sales driven, which may scare some of you. If you think about it though the right way, what's the advantage of a sales driven model for security? You've got allies. I'm thinking of a traditional company where you have salespeople. These are people who say nice things in order to convince other people to do what they want. So if you can get sales reps, people whose job it is to convince in a favorable manner, and you get a sales rep who recognizes the one obstacle between him and that 35-foot Chris Craft is a thing called a IPS, IP urine, I don't know. Do we need one of these things? I will sit outside the CFO's office and get that thing, that blinky box thing you want, because I want to sell Bank of America. All of a sudden, you don't have to do it. can go and make those people your allies. Or you go and find compliance or somebody else. Because it's just you, you have no power. If you are their only security hire, you have a portfolio and nothing. But if you can go and make some allies, you might be able to win some of these. So, why do we care about security? Because the law makes us, right? These are just letters and numbers and bullshit, right? HIPAA requires that we. GDPR requires that we. 23 NYC RR is the new New York cybersecurity law. MGL 93H is the Massachusetts one. I could go into these, but that's often a driver, right? The law requires that we do something about security, because these breaches are getting crazy. Yeah, that drives a lot, because your customers require it. What's a scarier phone call at 4:54 on a Friday? Your biggest customer complaining at you are a regulator. Odds are it's a customer. Or, of course, why do we care about security? Because your organization cares about security. I have heard that line so many times, and my answer is usually, yeah. I still love the Equifax CEO when he says, the guy whose job it was to make sure those systems were patched didn't do it, and oh well. I'm like, you know what? You probably have more quality control over the press release, right? If someone used the wrong Pantone color, there was someone else to QC that thing, right? You used the wrong font. Whoa, you got to stop and pull that back. Yet, did you QC? Because I'm imagining the person whose job was to make sure that Apache Struts is updated. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just a complete moron. It's like, yeah, here's my to-do list. This 9,000-line spreadsheet. Apache Struts was 2,300 deep in there. I was going to get to that, but I was still trying to clear February, right? So if we, this is open bullshit. The few shops that actually care about security, maybe there are some. Maybe you even work for one. Maybe you still believe it. But really, there's a legal fight over it, or your customers require it. These are the two that might actually show up and make you do a thing. So this is a great question. I use this to stump consultants who try to work for our shop when I interview them. What's the appropriate expenditure for security? I had to answer that in one bullet point. What would you say? Whatever it takes, up to and including the budget we already have. I've often liked the 10% of your IT spend. Like, where'd you pull that one from? I could show you, but it would be rude. Right? Usually the answer is, what do our customers demand? What are our peers doing? But really, we know that what the actual question is, what's the least we can get away with? What's the least I can spend and still have an appropriate, and I should put that in air quotes, an appropriate level of security? What's the least we can get away with? And hopefully by the end of this, we can figure out what we can do in the least amount that still is good enough, that still meets your actual requirements. You use this phrase, actual requirements, not what the law requires or your customers ask for. Because there's a difference between Bank of America requests that you do this thing versus Bank of America will pull the business if you don't. One's a request, the other's a hard demand. Filter out the things you actually have to do and concentrate on those. Get wins where you can outside of that. But the core hard kernel of your security program should be, what can I do that actually is a hard requirement or I lose business? So let's start defining terms, because I'm speaking of security in this amorphous, it's a gray goo. So I'll have two securities, please. In case you're unfamiliar, controls are individual measures to detect, prevent, or mitigate security risks. Pen testing is a control. A firewall is a control. A request that your employees show up to work sober is a control. Some of these are enforceable, but as You got, physical. You have an 8-foot-high fence with concertina wire around your secure facility. You got procedural. How often do you do a vulnerability scan with Qualys? Once every, I feel like it, right? Some kind of procedure that you task with somebody to say, you got to go do the thing. Access rights review. Technical. Do you actually have a blinky box to do the thing? And many of you are familiar, but just so we're talking about things, compliance. These are it's written on policy that you do these things. If you don't, we may fire you, or we may dock you pay, or we may make you sing I'm a Little Teapot in the break room. Some kind of punishment to make you do the things you're supposed to do. Don't give your passwords to everybody. Don't put your passwords on Post-it notes. Don't have a shared login for everyone in the HR department. Those are controls. Frameworks are big collections of controls that we all agree to, such as ISO, NIST 853, COBIT. I mean, NIST is already kind of for masochists, unless you actually have to. Usually when it's like, what should we pick? I'm like, ISO is the easiest to fake because you've got scope. You can scope down ISO to almost nothing, like PCI, where you PCI certify this box, but nothing in it, and therefore my SAC-D is compliant. That later, but you can play games with scope. You can play games with these things, but you've got basically your collection of controls, your stuff you promise to do that an outsider will assume if you say, we have an ISO certified or ISO aligned policy kit, it means that you're probably doing a bunch of these things. So those are the two terms I'll use again. So many controls, so little time, including my proofreading my doc. So implementing controls requires money, effort, and burden. Using this as three different things. Money, I got to go spend money to go buy the thing. I got to buy the blinky box. I got to buy the antivirus subscription. I've got to buy the something as a service. I got to go pay Splunk some money or more money. Effort. I actually have to have someone who either works for me or I've hired at a high rate go do the thing, turn the crank, right? To design, configure, maintain, and use that control, to do the thing. At pen tests, well, that's money, and then effort to go and remediate those findings, track them down and make sure they happen. So, and then there's burden. Policy that says we have a 5-minute lockout on all PC screens. Does that cost money? No. You can set that with GPO in a couple minutes. Is it effort? Minimal. Will it result in complaints? Yes. Will you get yelled at when you have things like, when you get those really stringent things like, we're going to air gap. Next thing you know, people on the Bank of America team have 2 PCs. One is for Bank of America business only, the rest is for other, because you put up some burdensome control to satisfy a need. I'm going to use that burden because that's often what gets you the most kickback, because I spend money that gets spent, and the only person who's really worried is accounting, but you spent it. It's done. It no longer rears its ugly face. Effort, the only person who's really complaining about that is the poor, the man or woman you said, go validate that thing. Guess what you're doing today? Go check the firewall rules. Make sure they're compliant with this standard. Once a month. Yes, it's that time of the month. Go do it. Burden. Burden's the one that keeps coming back, and the regular people, your end users, your customers are going to go, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to change my password? Because Bank of America requires it. So how do you select the controls, right? Because ISO or COBIT or NIST is going to have a set of controls that you should plunk in. HIPAA and GLBA and those may also suggest controls. Do you have to take all of them? No. No, you pick the ones you've got to do. Do the things that are mandatory, and this is the biggest way to save money and do this on a budget is figure out what controls you actually have to do. The problem is that this control set, this actual real hard controls you've got to do, is specific to your organization in a period of time. That same organization 2 years later may have a different control set because you signed contracts with new clients who made you do things, because you changed business, because regulations changed. You got into this business. You exited this business. So you are figuring this out as you go. If you are new to this, or your company is new to this, you're figuring this out. And here's the fun trick. Basic rule of consulting is, I don't have to know everything. I just have to be half an hour ahead of my clients. You, as head of security, or you as a new security manager, do not have to do everything. You don't have to know everything. You just have to know how to be ahead of your customers and your end users before they ask. And you will come across as a genius. There is nothing wrong with pulling up the Wikipedia page about the thing during a con call. However, one point, if you're a fetishist about keyboards, cherry reds or cherry browns are really, really noisy. So when you hear so Alex, can we do that thing? Yes, we can. So I have been asked to get a quieter keyboard for con calls, and I have winged this in such a way that I've made my clients happy. It's okay to wing it, as long as you validate that you did it right later, when you're not under crunch time. So how do you select the controls? How extensive should they be? So how? We can do the old-fashioned way, cost, benefit, risk-based, right? Jet engine plus peanut butter equals risk, I think is what my old boss used to say, and I never listened to him because he's Canadian. Thanks, James. Idea is this, right? The probability of an event times the impact of that event without controls. If the cost of that is greater than the cost of the control plus the probability of the event still happening and the impact of the event with that control, you put the control in place. If they're equal, it's a wash. If the cost of the control plus the probability of plus the potential impact of the control with it is higher than the probability without the control, you don't do it. You accept the risk. That's great, right? Like, remember when you took Calc 1 and Calc 2 and you learned how to optimize? And you're like, wow, I can solve problems until you realize a problem with this. Right? Implement the control. If the benefit is great, the cost of control is less than the unmitigated probability. Really hard to quantify. What's the probability that you're going to get breached this year? 100%. What's the probability? How much does that probability go down if you buy something really new and shiny from Palo Alto this year? Yes. It depends. If you are a Palo Alto sales rep, you will say, our research shows that'll, oh, nice. Actually, better yet, knowing if they're proper enterprise sales rep, 73 point. That added little oomph, like, oh. But, oh yeah. So the only thing you can actually guarantee you have a good idea to guess is the cost, right? Like, this would be great if you could quantify all this rest. So you can make some guesses, but you're at the end of the day, you're like, I don't know. I think I feel better knowing that there's a $4U $100,000 box from Palo Alto that does next-gen threat hunting, threat-centric something. I don't know. It's awesome. Hear that thing when it fires up. It's noisier than the freaking Sun E420 that's underneath of it. I don't know what that does, but it's still there. So it's a great idea. It only really works when you absolutely have I know that the risk is dramatically reduced and the impact is dramatically reduced and the cost ain't that high. The rest is you're winging it. So as nice as this model is, it doesn't actually work. The second model is, I don't want that to happen, right? How many times you get a regular line manager, a non-technical manager, waving around one of those magazines? Oftentimes it's the award-winning airline magazine. Outside. This issue is about cybersecurity. And you're like, oh God, what the hell is this guy going to be on about? Like, we need a flame wall. Like, huh? What? Because invariably they're calling you like while waiting for their luggage. Like, we have a flame wall, right? And you're like, firewall? No, flame. We have one of those. Yeah, sure. Because that breach thing, that sounds horrible. Like, yeah, it is. That's why I'm here. Why am I taking your call? So you don't want that thing to happen. And I want you to guarantee that thing won't happen. You're like, sure, yeah. I don't want that thing to happen again. Ring. Hi, who authorized to put the entire customer list on paste bin? My favorite is, who authorized to put all of our prospectuses on scribed? Like, huh, you're in trouble. Because you're right, they all are on scribed. What are they doing there? So I don't want that to happen again. I want you to guarantee that that horrible thing that made us all scramble won't happen again, right? So you're lurching. God knows we do airport security like that, you know? Oh, people's shoes may explode, so you have to take off your shoes. And I'm waiting for some entrepreneurial ISIS or Al-Qaeda member to go like, suppository bomb. Just like, yep, gonna make you all do some extra special time in line, right? You want to prevent that horrible thing from happening. And I call this the Senior Management Protection Program. I told the security guy to do that thing. Now you're in this, well, did you give me the budget to do that thing? No, you take it out of your existing budget. Like, yeah, about that. So this is the, I told you to fix that, you didn't, it's on you. So more ways of controlling selection controls. Some controls are soon because they're low cost and high estimated impact, right? We use encryption, you know, I often have this one, full disk encryption of laptops that may hold sensitive data. It's a no-brainer now, right? Because pretty much every OS you can get, you know, unless you're that poor bastard who's still running some kind of like Plan 9 running on brainfuck. If you've got some relatively modern OS that you're supporting, full disk encryption, it's an easy thing to do. Just click the box, done. It's one of the many checkboxes I've got fixed, right? Expensive, you know, low impact, high expense. You're like, I'm not doing that. But like kind of knee-jerk, of course we do that thing. Pick those controls. Or what, you know, what we call the laugh test. If I heard that another shop wasn't doing this thing, I'd freak. I'd laugh at them. Problem is that I no longer laugh because many of my clients don't do like the primitive things. Like that was like, why is Telnet still open? Oh, it's a useful way to administer Unix boxes. Like, dude, I like the 90s too, but they're over now. SSH has been stable. Like, I don't know about that. Like, so I no longer laugh. I cry. Yeah, so I should replace this with like, does it make me drink more? But right, so you've got some controls because you do them. You do them why? You've already got a budget for it. Why are we replacing the firewalls? Because we have money in the budget and we used to have firewalls. So it's easy to say, I am replacing the old ones with the new ones. Is that low cost, high estimated impact? No, but it's easy. The regulation requires it. This is a great way to cut through some bullshit, except I know way too many beardy sysadmins who will lie. My favorite is a friend of mine who literally stood up in front of a manager and said, I think you're violating HIPAA because you are sending protected health information in clear text, and that violates HIPAA. Now, of course, I'm going to ask two questions. One, was HIPAA relevant? He was doing a pen test, and he was sending a pen test report to the client, or was asked to send a pen test report to the client. How many pen test reports have PHI in them? Unless you've really screwed something up, should be none, right? You may allege, like, here is data, and you exit out, but he was convinced that the pen test report included PHI. The second one was, he said, HIPAA requires encryption. Anyone want to argue that you have to encrypt PHI under HIPAA? Good. You don't. Stressable. So maybe it doesn't. Maybe the regulation doesn't require it, but the number of times people want to get into a regulatory fight over this is rare. I do it because, well, I'm a lawyer, but that's kind of neither here nor there. Let your customers tell you what they want you to do. You've got your base controls because you've already had them, or you want to just not be laughed at by your compatriots. But then your customers will tell you what they want. And that's a half-decent way of figuring out what is considered normal for your industry. How can you tell? Vendor requirements in contracts and vendor assessments. You know, the number of contracts I've said that have, you've got these controls. The ones that scare me are the ones that have a blank there, right? You will provide the following contracts, blank. Like, don't let the sales rep write that. Don't, because they'll add things because they want to make the sale happen. And like, now you just agreed to do all those things that a week ago you didn't know what they were. We got one of those DLP things, right? No, don't. Would you like to try to install one today? So here is a body of knowledge that you can steal from. If you are new to the industry, you can go get them. Make some friends in your industry. There is a meetup for people for information security people in healthcare or financial service or whatnot. Get to know these people on a social basis. If they like you, this is one of those reciprocal things, what you do is you take the ones you're getting hit with, file off the serial numbers, so you have a body of knowledge about what everyone's expecting. It's a really quick way. It doesn't violate an NDA if you're just taking the information out of it, right? These are the controls. I'm not naming the client. I'm naming, here are the ones I see that all the ones ask for. You want the common ones. You want the ones that all your customers are demanding. That body of knowledge is valuable. Share. Don't be a dick. Share that information, right? Because it also, in a way, from the perspective of the vendor would like to not have to fight you tooth and nail to put in some controls. They would like you to have a pretty good idea of what controls they're expecting. So use that as your first body of knowledge. So talk about that. So you've got this big pile of controls, right? ISO plus you read the last 8 vendor assessments, and you went through and asked legal to dump all the appendices from the contracts, and now you've got this whole selection. You've got 125 different controls to select from. How do you pare that down, right? Because now, like, holy shit, I have 122 controls. My own kind of seat-of-the-pants risk assessment says we might have 20 in place, partially in places. How do I go from that big body to a smaller one? How do I cut it out? How do I cut out ones that I don't think I need until you make me? And so I'm going to give you a couple guidelines and a dirty trick. So if you have 3 requirements that you think you need, first one only gets checked after an incident, right? It's checked, did you have that in place? And the only time we're going to ask is post-breach. Number 1. Number 2, we ask that you, prior to the contract, do it, but you can self-certify. Like, say, PCI SAC-D. I say I do these things. Requirement 3 gets checked by people who can cost you money. Which requirement do you fulfill? 3. Because this and this, like, the chances that you get breached, No, it's less than 100%. And then again, even if it's like, hey, you should have had this in place, sometimes you're then arguing, would that have stopped it, right? You know, the number of times I've had arguments about DLP would have prevented that. DLP would have prevented that, except they walked out with a hard drive. I've not seen DLP stop physical theft. You know, and I really want some sales rep from Symantec to go, ours would. Like, okay, awesome. Will you sign that in a contract? I would love to see that happen. So you actually go and say, this is the requirement that I care about. Which are the ones that the vendor's going to check on? I want to make the vendor assessor happy. Not saying you don't do the other two, but the other two are slightly lower importance. So easily, cheaply verified things get checked, even if they're lower value. I'm going to tell a story, and I love telling a story because it's one of those, something that, I have a rule that says, many times I will see something that seems just asinine and stupid, but I'll ask why, because sometimes you find out there's a really good reason for it. The story I'm going to tell is about a rock band called Van Halen. Van Halen had a rule that said if you had brown M&Ms in a bowl in the dressing room, they could walk from the show and you would have to pay. The reason why was they were one of the first, they kind of built the idea of a giant arena show that had massive loads of power, weight on the theatrics, and essentially people would just sign the contract riders. And these look at engineering degree, engineering diagrams in these contract riders say, we're going to show up and we need all the power, all the mounts, and if the last thing you had here is a folk show, no, we need like real infrastructure. And we want to make sure that you read the goddamn contract. You read these requirements and said, yes, we checked. We have the power, we can support the weight, we can move things in or out. However, to validate that you've got power every 18 inches, 60 feet off the stage is hard. You can, however, force them to identify something that you can check. So there's a bias towards things that you can easily show to say, we are doing that thing. Here is proof. Because you show, if there's something you can validate and you aren't doing and you say you're doing it, it means you lied about something that was easy to check. That makes me believe you less when you say the hard to check thing we're doing too. So, what are the easily? So, like a SOC 2. I hate them because I've gotten people through them, and I have, well, because they always send like second-year accountants who don't know what any of the words mean. And I've actually, during a SOC 2, someone said, you don't have a policy on incident response. I'm like, have you read my document called Incident Response Policy? And like, well, that doesn't discuss IR. Like, you know what IR is, right? Well, IR is different than incident response. Like, so like, find and replace, there's a whole IR section that was copied and pasted from the incident response. Like, see, and the fact that you know, what security tool do you use the most? Microsoft Word, find and replace. Got a client, a SOC 2. SOC 2 is easy to like vomit up and go, there, we do those things. Does it make you more secure? No, because it's a bundle of lies that at a point in time was not obvious to an accountant who's had 2 years experience. But that's easy to check, right? I ask for, you know, if I'm an outside vendor and I say, I want your last 3 years of pen tests, how many of you who are doing those pen tests will go, I'm not showing that auditor that? And why am I asking? If I'm asking for the last 3 years, what do I want to see? That's one, but thank you. Are they the same report? Because as a pen tester, the saddest moment of my time was realizing, reviewing the last pen test report, that I could save the 12 hours I normally book to write a pen test report with change date. It was bone for bone unfixed. I'm like, so I actually wrote in the bottom, like, why am I doing this? QC didn't catch it. And I'm like, and during the readout, like, I would like to skip to section 4.5. Why am I here? Like, I've identified a new finding that says you are not remediating the problems, and this bothers me. Like, Alex, you're doing pen testing. Why are you lecturing them? Like, because why? Why are we here? And now I'm in strategy where I get to go and say, that's the more valuable finding is you didn't fix it the last time. The pen test is useless. Why spend grunt time for someone to pound your systems if you're not going to do anything about it? And I get when you have like the informational ones, because there's nothing like, I can determine the version of the OS. Wow, that would be a big guess. It's got, you know, it doesn't have any of the Microsoft services, but has SSH. I'm going to guess it may be a Unix box. Just say it. That's okay. That doesn't bother me. But like, I can get RCE, and you didn't fix that problem 3 years running. That shows that trend. That's the easily verified thing. I want to show, you know, if I'm worried about a vendor, I want to see that you fix the problems. So I'm going to say some crazier things. We all say this, right? Compliance, bang, equals security. Usually that's from people who are so well-funded that they can actually have like a threat hunting team. I get called about that. Like, would you like to be on our threat hunting team? Like, I don't know what that really is. That sounds like it should have a trademark by SecureWorks on it. You know, like, that's great, but really I want to, you know, most of my shop's like, could you patch the shit from last year? That's the, I'm the vuln hunting team. Did you patch it? Are there systems that have been out of compliance for 90 days? And then some are like, we've had systems out of patch for 900 days. I'm like, how are you allowed to do that? Like, oh, they support our core infrastructure. Like, please stop talking when you're just making this worse. So yes, compliance, bang, equals security, but one's easier to show. From a vendor assessment point of view, your client has 4 hours to figure out whether or not to jump in front of the freight train that is the business deal, right? Because if you're a shop big enough, think of it from the vendor assessor point of view, right? Your job is to write up a spreadsheet that asks a bunch of questions, and all you do is read lies all day. Your job is to throw up a hand and say, I really think this is a bad idea. And you have limited political capital. You can't stop that many deals. So what you want to do is show enough that means that you are not the biggest asshole they've met that week. That's all you have to do to make the sale. Right? Someone else has openly lied that week and like, I'm going to go put a hurting on them. You're just a garden variety schmuck. I will let you pass. I might put a requirement or two in, but you're going to make the sale. So, but proving it, oftentimes proving compliance is far easier than proving security, because every time I see I get a client who's like, they demanding a right to audit, like a right to pen test. I'm like, I have never seen one exercise, ever. I've been doing this for way too many years. But they'll ask to see all your paper, because that's a lot easier. So compliance isn't security, but from a vendor perspective, it's the same. It's better. It is possible to over-control. It is possible to overspend on a control, because that Palo Alto sales guy was really nice, and we went to a steak dinner. I think the bill was like $800. It was worth it. And you're like, oh, sure! And they like, you wake up the next morning, and there's a thank you note from the Palo Alto sales rep, like, what did I sign? That's beautiful in Blinky Box. Like, that just blew half my security budget. I overspent. I over-controlled. And the problem is that checking a box really hard doesn't check the surrounding boxes. I know, checkbox security is bad. Yeah, but if you check all the boxes, right? And then when you're done with that, you can now go back to the castle, because I think of the checkbox securities. You go walk around the castle and go, there's a wall here, bricks are, the stones are fine. And you're looking for like gates open, gates missing, gates on fire, right? And when you jog around and come back, you're like, now we can talk about higher end stuff. And my checkboxes, all the checkboxes are filled. I can now really think about moat design or tower configuration, stuff like that. But odds are you're scuttling around checking boxes because that's all you have time to do. You've got open recs for 5 people to help you with that. But guess what? Checking the boxes is probably the best bang for your buck until you can do the other stuff. Because I'm thinking of like every big breach falls back to one of those. You did something, you failed to do something that is relatively programmatically easy to do. Target. You got alerts that you didn't do anything about. Equifax. You didn't patch a known vuln for 90 days for internet-facing systems. And clearly there are other controls that failed too, that was enough to have it all happen. But while, yes, compliance isn't security, check all your boxes first. It's a part of this nutritious, balanced breakfast. So good controls are the ones that people are actually asking for. This is customer-based, but you're looking for them to go and say, this is what we really care about. The other stuff is stuff that you have to be independently convinced. You have no allies for that other control that you want but ain't no one asking for. And maybe you can justify it. Maybe you think, no, this blinky box or this policy or this thing will pay off, but you're the only person in the room advocating for that. It's really easy to say 60% of our customers require this control. It means that I can go to 6% of the sales reps and say, back me up on this. Make that sale easier. And at that point, that sales rep will now pay attention to you because you just said something to them. You said, I want to help you buy a boat. All of a sudden, you went from the weird, twitchy guy in the break room to the guy who can help me get a boat. Like, all of a sudden, you are now relevant to me, right? He will stop doing the other sales rep-y things and now pay attention to you for a minute. Don't freak him out. Explain in small words. You've got 3 bullet points, and 2 of them are oxygen is necessary for life, I like money. You've got a 3rd bullet point where you can explain why you need that control. So, proving your assertions. If you say you're doing a thing, how do you prove it? And people ask for more than a self-certification. Many of my clients run into this problem. They're like, hey, we can promise everything because we self-certify. We have somehow found that a SAC-D, a line that says we have an ISO 27001-2 aligned security program, but we have not yet certified it. We have an internal pen test team, so we don't use an external vendor. We do our own vulnerability scanning. We have not used a QSA because we're under the size, something like that. So sometimes you'll get a vendor who will demand, prove it. Show me that you do the thing. So this makes you have a fallback position when you know that the vendor is going to ask for more. Assert the things you should be doing, assuming you are, and you can prove that you're doing. This is where I talk about policy and standards and artifacts of compliance, and most people's eyes glaze over, except that this can be a magical thing where you can shut up a vendor assessor tracks. If you vomit documentation on them, they go away. They no longer bother because they figure anyone who's willing to drop a bunch of documentation that shows that they're actually looking, they're going and checking the box to make sure the castle hasn't fallen over, odds are, just going back to looking at the worldview of the vendor assessor, their job is to make sure that they don't get fired. What can get them fired? A breach from a vendor that they said was okay. Or You blew all your political capital trying to stop a deal from happening. Those are the two extremes of their lives. So, if you can give them enough warm, fuzzy feelings that they're not worried about you, you get a pass from them. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be good enough. And showing documentation is a good way to do that. So, artifacts. Being able to drop a risk register of all the issues. These are all the things that bug me from a security perspective. Big, ugly Excel spreadsheet. Unless you're so big that you're using Archer or RSAM, and then if you're that big, I feel for you. I've tried to fight with Archer and RSAM and Risk Fabric, and I think that really they're all basically an Excel spreadsheet with an uglier front. But all the stuff you're worried about that you have to fix goes in one ugly spreadsheet or a database or something that says, I am worried about those things. I will check them off when I can. So at any given time, I can say, here's what's still on my plate that I have to worry about. Because it shows that even if I have a horrible pen test, all the things are broken, but I have a remediation plan, and you can show better that the last time you had a horrible pen test and you remediated the things, it means that your promises that say, I will fix that before your company's data flows through me. So all of a sudden, a little bit of process here buys you a lot of credibility for your security program. This is cheap. This is some effort on your behalf. It's not a lot of burden on your end users. You can suffer through this. There may be times where you're sucking this into, if you have internal audit or accounting or regulatory groups, you may want to merge the risk registers to say, that way you can compare and contrast their risks, the stuff they're afraid of. But you should be able to vomit out in one document, here's all the stuff that I'm worried about, I haven't yet remediated, but I'm planning to. These are the ones that we decided we're not remediating, we're accepting the risk. It builds good faith, it shows that you're doing the things you say you're doing. Because there's nothing like dropping a really nice policy kit that's perfectly compliant with ISO 27001 and 2, and then when you ask, so do you do any of this? There's that awkward silence. Because you're not. I can, asking when I did assessments, it would be something like, so, when was the last time you actually tested your IR plan? Like, oh, we've never done that. Like, but your policy says you test it annually. Like, oh, it does, doesn't it? Like, so if you show, had an incident, this is what we did. Even if the incident is Bob at the loading dock got a piece of malware on the combination malware collector and FedEx box. Did you do the thing? This proves that you do the thing. What did you do? Ran malware bytes. Fixed. Shows you do the thing. Shows that the things that you can show easily you're doing, so therefore the hard things you're probably doing too. Track exceptions, right? There's nothing like when you get the answer that says, are all your systems running supported operating systems? And people will check yes. And invariably there's a kiosk in the reception area that's running XP. Like, but you said you were. Is this the XP extended? They're like, no. I'm like, shouldn't leave the proof that you're not doing the thing in front of the auditor. It's okay to have that XP box, because you say, I do have an XP box that runs the incredibly important task of telling you what office any individual works in. We do have systems that don't meet our policy, but we accepted the risk. XP box in a kiosk in St. Louis and isn't plugged into anything else. But it shows that I'm not lying to you. Because I pointed that out, that doesn't mean that means that I'm less worried about a cluster of Win 2000 boxes that haven't been patched since like the George Bush administration, running something core. Because you called out the thing, said, there are places where I'm not compliant, but I think it's okay. Here's why. Right? You're showing that you're working what you say you're working. The cheap control. Okay, control substitution. So a lot of times you have a technical control that's really, really hard. I'm trying to think, there was one, I tried to get a client through this, and they wanted to show that you could not access the jump box from an outside country. And we said, we can whitelist and blacklist IPs, and like, well, what if they use a proxy? Like, what, you want us to like decap something and figure it out? And I'm like, fine, you know what? The only people coming into the jump box are the remote support team, half of which are in Canada. So technically, half of our staff is violating your requested policy of only US-based people can log into our boxes. So I couldn't put in a technical control. I instead just put a policy control in that says, you know, you must click I hate curling and socialized medicine to log in. Donald Trump is better looking than Justin Trudeau. Yes. And therefore, by policy, I bar the Canadians from logging in. And it's a stupid control, it's a stupid request. But it was a vendor, or it was a client that had a lot of money and were willing to pay what my client wanted for this service. So I'm like, we'll put in a compliance control that's at 100th the cost. It's slight burden, but I can't come up with a technical control to rewrite your application to make this happen. So also, I can replace controls by SLAs, right? I have, say you get someone who's got very, very rigorous physical security controls. Quickest way to do that, I'm not building out a data center for your nitpicky performance, physical security. I'm just going to shove it in AWS, right? Those controls are in an SLA that say Amazon has these physical controls in space. Done. I don't have to build a secure colo. I don't have to do all that. Like, Amazon's doing that thing. What, you're not going to trust Amazon to have decent physical security? I haven't seen any Amazon racks at 401 North Broad in Philly, so I'm assuming they at least go to decent colos. Yeah, I like playing the homeless vagrant or sysadmin on a 2-day rollout at 401 North Broad. And we figured out that it depends on what boxes the person's sleeping on. I've done that. I've actually had to nudge someone like, dude, you can't sleep in front of my rack. And they muttered something, and I'm like, let's see, they smell bad, they're ill-kept, be a sysadmin. Okay, but nonetheless, like, right, I can replace it. You requested a control that I can't meet. Maybe I can handle this with an SLA somewhere. Because I'm doing this bit for bit. I'm not doing this for all of my services. I'm doing this for you, one vendor, or one client, because it's cheaper. So stovepiping. This is more advanced. I'm doing stuff just for one control. They have a stupid overburdened thing because they want to do something perverse with your service. You've got essentially like a box knockoff, and all of a sudden a large health insurer wants to use your thing. You're like, ah. Our tool is not built for this. We don't have all the compliance controls in. I would like to put them in, but that will piss off all my other customers. Well, maybe I can cheat and just create a second segregated system for them. I use the same software. I use the same colo. Not the colo, same configs and all that. But there's a different landing page that you guys go to that I can put all the controls you want in. More. Yeah. So say they have this list of unreasonable demands, and you're like, wait a minute, this is just for you. Sometimes you have two choices when you get a large client that wants something that is otherwise, you're like, that's going to be expensive. That's actually going to cost money. And you have to now go from a technical decision to a business decision. I kind of went through this analysis with one of my clients. They wanted, essentially we had to rebuild their app. Okay, cool. And we're like, the cost to remediate all these requirements that no other clients asked for comes out to about $60,000. How much are we going to be making from that client? And the sales rep's like 100. So $40,000 is our revenue just to implement these controls. Odds are it may not be worth it. However, just say during the call when you're talking to the security people, we can do that, but for you, those additional controls, we're going to offer you a special deal. Instead of $100,000, it's $140,000. We're going to charge you more to get those controls you actually asked for. And sometimes you'll get a, we're fine with that, we'll pay you more money. Or you may decide how many other people will also want these controls. We lay that off, but you've turned a set of technical issues into a business decision. Do you as a company decide to shoulder these new costs? Do you spread the cost back to the customer? Be open and obvious about it. Like you got all nitpicky and want all these controls. This is what it's going to cost. Odds are by this point, you've gotten deep in by the time you're doing the vendor assessment, all the other shops that were pitching have fallen out. So you might be able to get away with that. We've negotiated that. Or you may actually have to decline the work. Like one was essentially a software testing app that a large hospital chain wanted to use doing live testing on live data. Like, so you're all HIPAA compliant here. I'm like, no. There's literally, like, we crowdsource testing. So anyone can log in. So that means like 110,000 people can get PHI from the systems they're testing. No, we cannot make that HIPAA compliant because HIPAA requiring you limit data to the people who need to see it. A bunch of basically click farm level QA testers in Chandigarh aren't going to, that's not limited to the people who need to see it. We cannot become HIPAA compliant for your needs. It's going to be too expensive to modify our service just for you. We can't take the work because we don't think we're going to get any more work from similarly situated customers. Now, of course, this isn't your decision. This is the decision you help the business people make. But you go and very honestly say, it's going to cost more to do this thing. So if you fail to convince a customer, make it a lesson. Because we didn't do that thing, it cost us this. Add the requirement to the next sprint or quarter if you think you can. It was one of those, we could do it if we knew we had to, had time. So that's how you can kind of build a body of knowledge for the controls you need and get some support to build it. Any questions? Great. Cool. Oh. Mm-hmm. As in Okay, I think I see what you're. Usually, the self-certification will be something that's by an open body, like PCI allows you to, if you're below a certain size, number of transactions, you can describe your controls and without having an outsider test them, you say we do all these things. That's a self-certification, right? I have seen, there are open certifications that don't require a third party to validate what you have done. Like, I can say I meet HIPAA for a client. I as their virtual CISO say they meet all the requirements of HIPAA. And if you trust me, that's great. That's a self-certification. A third-party certification would be where a third party comes in and says, we who have no skin in the game other than we would like to not have a bad commercial name, have reviewed this stuff, and we think it meets those requirements. Like high trust is an example, or PCI after a QSA, if you're a tier 1 provider, where you say a third party came in and looked at this and did this. I don't think you're going to have questions of illegality. I think you'll have questions of, do I buy your self-certification, or do I make you, if I'm the prospective client, if I don't trust you, do I go make you get a certification? Do I make you get a third party to say, I believe that their certification is valid? Uh-huh. Oh, okay. So I create a certification test for my own software, and so like ISC. Hmm? To get ahead. Until you make it a requirement, like I'm thinking CISP is required for there's some, if you are in DoD, so you can make it a requirement. There would be a question of, is it unfair? Is it some kind of unfair competition? I haven't seen anything I haven't seen the case yet, because I'm thinking if it was specific to a vendor. Say, for example, I required that you got a vendor-specific certification to work on the device. Then you get into basing on where that is. There's sort of like right to repair and the like. But I don't know where you would get essentially a legal claim against a certifying body for creating a certification. But I don't know. My TLDR answer is I'm not sure. Okay. Spell the certification. Yes. There's a better rant about this by Duncan Manutz at Gurkhan. I think this is his talk 2 or 3 years ago about certifications. And it's a great rant about ISC and saying the CISP is a marketing exercise by this point. I don't know. I have somehow managed to stumble through my career with getting only 2 certifications in my life. none of which are, like I have the CCSK because my boss made me get it. I have an old Apple laptop certification to do repairs under Apple Care, and somehow that's been okay. Like, I'm a lawyer, yes, so there's that certification. Yes, oh yeah, there are bar dues and CLEs and all that, but it's rare that my day job is being a security consultant. So the number of times the fact that I'm a lawyer comes into play isn't that often because I'm not giving legal advice, I'm giving technical and procedural advice and really marketing advice, like how to you take your tiny little shop and go and be able to hunt big clients. And a lot of times I play the role of I walk the vendor assessor around the room a few times and basically convince them, like, I will give you good enough answers so you can go back and not get beat up for not asking the right question. And I'm not going to lie to you, but I will give very crafted answers that explain why our security, while it may look woefully bad, isn't. Because we don't have, we're 16 people. We don't have a separate group that does this. But this is why it's not. But certifications is an interesting question. I think they have a value. I realize, and this is way off point, but I talk to people coming up, right? How did you get where you're at? I'm like, that's not the right question to ever ask me. Like, I took the wrong path to get where I'm at. It's a meandering path. Clearly, to do security, I think you need, to break into it, certifications don't suck, right? The person who's got a CISP is at least going to get listened to, while a person without a CISP is like, who are you? Unless you've otherwise built a name. I mean, generally at this point in my career, it's like, oh, you're the loudmouth guy with the ponytail who yells a lot, and that's more valuable than a CISP. But coming up, clearly you don't even get a phone call from a recruiter if you don't have some. So it at least establishes that you could pass a test. You could sit still for long enough and answer questions about the appropriate height of a fence. Is that enough? No, because I remember doing .com 1.0 and meeting people who had all the Microsoft certifications and couldn't explain what a domain controller did. I remember the one was couldn't understand how to troubleshoot a simple IP connectivity problem. Was this machine is looking for a DHCP server that doesn't exist. He's like, well, I have an MCSE. I'm like, I can troubleshoot. You've moved the PC from here to here. The old network had a DHCP server. The other one doesn't. You have say MCSE again. I'm going to take your mouse. Because he just like, okay, and it was so. I don't want to be the knee-jerk certs are bullshit, but for every story we have of someone who's certified and smart, there are 3 stories about the person who's got a lot of certs and has no common sense about how to do the thing. Whether it's, why is this not working? Why does this not meet these requirements? Why does Qualys keep crashing? Why does Qualys keep showing all these vulnerabilities? Why can't I patch this, right? And some kind of context. I think certs are the get in the door, and then after that, it's reputation and quality. Cool. And over.